Hey there, welcome to my channel, My Amish Neighbor. I thought I would do my introduction outside today because it's a beautiful day and I want you to get a peek at some of my baby goats that I've just had. It won't take long. But what are we talking about today? I'm going to go over how to can meat, a chicken specifically, and I'll show you step by step. This is my husband and I have been, thinking about where the world's going, and more we think about, wow, the Amish are already living in a simple way and independent. What are they doing that keeps them prepared even in the worst of times? And one of them is canning. They preserve their food, they store ahead, and each one is different, but I went ahead and decided that we're going to start canning our meat because what if the power goes out? The electric, your freezers will go down and then you're just have a freezer full of ruined meat. So we're going to start canning our meat, and I'll show you today how to can chicken step by step. And from what I've researched, anything you freeze or you can is best used within a year or two. That's just a standard. However, it can last to 5 years. You're just not going to get the bang that you get at 1 year. But if things are bad, I keep telling my husband, when you're starving to death, anything will be good, right? So we're just kind of prepping a little bit. All right, let me give you a little peek at our little guys that we've had over the winter here. These two are twins. They are roughly 5 weeks old, both girls. These are our two newest additions. They're about 2 weeks old. Long-legged. These two are pretty tall. They're two girls. Oh my goodness. Everyone just stares at me when I have my camera, just like when you... And then over here we have our teeny tiny Nigerians. The Nigerian, dad's a Nigerian, and that really came out in these two. And they're trying to chase mom. Two girls. They are about 3 weeks old. And then this one is 9 weeks. And her sister's already been sold, and she's on Craigslist waiting. And I hope you enjoyed that little commercial break. All right, back to the house. I'm going to show you how to can some chicken. And think about it. Think about where we are. I remember, I'm just going to go off. I remember when I was younger and I first read about the Depression, and I thought everybody was affected by it. And it wasn't until I became an adult that I realized not everybody was affected by the Depression. There are people that prepared and were innovative and thought of ways to survive through that. So if you're worried about everything going on in the world right now, instead of being worried about it, come up with solutions. Like, what can I do? What do I have control over, and what can I do? And that's what this video is about. It's giving you some tools, make you think about your food supply and what you can do. Don't go crazy. Just do a little bit at a time, and it will be what it will be, right? All right, let's get in the kitchen and can some chicken. All right, we're going to start out with the supplies that you're going to need to can. And one of the things that I always use is a pressure cooker. And there are two different ways to can. You can use the pressure cooker, or you can use another way, what they call it like a bath, where they pretty much just boil it in water and it doesn't put the pressure on it. I do not ever use that. I always use the pressure cooker, and this is what mine looks like here. I do about 7 quarts at a time, and if you use pints, which are smaller, you can make 2 layers. But basically that's what I use. There are other ways, other pots and things like that. You just have to do your research. I also have these supplies here. I use the plastic knife there. When you put all your meat and everything into the jar, you want to like shove it in there and get all the air bubbles out. And a lot of people are tempted to use a metal knife, but you don't want to do that because it can chip the glass. Chipping the side of the jar, it could mess with your seal, and it will make your meat go rancid, and it can go bad, and it's dangerous. So just use the plastic. This here, if you use, there's a wide mouth jar and a narrow mouth. If I use the narrow mouth jars, I use this to put my food in it because it helps get it in there. And then this here is a little device to help you get those hot jars out of the pressure cooker because they're extremely hot and you have to get them out to cool. You'll see how I use them later. So where do you get jars? You can go anywhere. I know Amazon sells them right here. We have a store called JR's. They sell all these supplies, and I have a video above if you'd like to see that, where you get a little tour. But I was very fortunate that they had the supplies in. I know a lot of these supplies are starting to run out, but basically, if this is your first time, you would buy a case and you would already have the band and the seal on the jar. This is what a quart-sized jar looks like. This is what the seal and the band looks like. See that little round thing? That is what seals all the air out of your jar. And you don't want to use used ones. You don't want to use old ones. You want to make sure they're new and clean and dry when you use them. It's really important. And the seal, just you use that while you're canning, and then later when you store them, you take that back off. Again, if you buy a case, all that's there, but here's a little example of how it's going to go on the jar. Makes common sense, but if you've never done it before, there it is. Now, the first thing I do is get all my supplies out, and once those are out, ready to go, then I started to cook my meat, and I'll show you what I did there. When you're canning, there's a lot of things going on at once, so you got to try to figure out how to make it all work. But I went out and I bought 3 packages, 5-pound packages of meat, all chicken breast, and it worked perfectly. We actually had enough to fill 7 quarts, and then there was enough for the meal for the evening for 3 of us. My mother lives with us, so it came out perfect. So 5-pound packages of chicken, about 15 pounds is what you need. And while I was cutting it up and putting it into a bowl with seasoning, I would give it to my husband, and he started cooking it on the stove. So we kind of did a teamwork approach. You can do it on your own. You could cut everything, have it ready, and then cook it, just do it in steps. You can do what you want. Some people prefer to can their meat raw. We prefer to cook it and season it and just experiment and see how it goes. We are doing like 7 quarts at a time, then we're going to taste it, and then go from there and try different variations. But we just put salt, pepper, garlic, and I think my husband threw some onions in there just to give it more flavor. Now, once he was done with cooking, then I threw it into another bowl and I started putting it into the jars. Now, one of the things you have to do before you put your meat or any food into a jar that you're going to can, you want to put hot, boiling water, as hot as you can get, tap water, into the jar, then dump it and then put your food, because you want to heat up the glass so it doesn't break when it goes into the pressure cooker. So while you're cooking the meat or getting it ready, before you stuff it in there, make sure you let it sit for a few minutes in hot water. Now, I added chicken broth to mine. Again, there's different instructions out there. Some people don't put anything and they say just let the juices from the meat fill up the jar. We decided we were going to use chicken broth just to give it a little bit more flavor. You want to leave about 1.25 inches at the top of the jar, because there will be more juices coming from the meat and it will fill it up more. So be careful there. You don't want to fill it to the top. And then here's that plastic knife I was telling you about. And you want to just push it around on the side and make sure all the air bubbles are out. You're going to still have some air bubbles, but that'll help a lot. And I'll show you that at the end. They kind of take care of themselves after you take them out of the pressure cooker. You're going to put your seal on and then the band. And again, make sure that band is on there correctly, not too tight, just enough to hold it on there. Now, while I was doing all that, I had 3 quarts of water boiling on the stove to put into the pressure cooker, so that you're putting your jars right into hot water. You want to, get a head start in that pressure cooker as much as you can. So there's my water. I took that and I dumped it into my pressure cooker. If you notice at the bottom of that pressure cooker, there's a little steel platelet. Make sure that's in there, because you do not want your jars touching the bottom of the pressure cooker, because it can crack. There they are. 7 of them fit. Nice and snug. Again, you can use pint size if you want and get 2 layers. And then you want to make sure your lid goes on. The first time I did this, I was like, this lid doesn't fit. See that little V there? You're matching that up with the little V that's on the lid. So just to give you a little tip there, even though you read the directions, sometimes you miss stuff like that because there's so much to do. Now, what I'm waiting for here is I'm waiting for the pressure in the pot to get up to 10. My recipe that I'm using said 10 to 12 is what you want your pressure gauge to be at. The most, I think it goes up to 22 or something like that, but you want to keep it in that range so that it's ideal. If it drops under 10, you have to start your timer all over again. So be there, stay in the kitchen while you're watching this, because you want to make sure that gauge stays at 10 to 12. While you're waiting, go find something else to do, but stay nearby, because you want to watch that gauge. You do not want it to drop under 10 once you get it there. Once it's at 10, you're going to put your timer for 90 minutes on this particular recipe, and it has to stay above the 10. If it drops below, you have to start all over again. That's really crucial. So stick around so that you can watch that gauge. And there you see I hit the 10. And there's the little weight that I was talking about. I put that there because this is where all the steam will come out when it's cooking, and to prevent it from, shooting up and hitting your roof, it's just a little weight or a little cover there that you can put over that hole. You may find that if your gauge tries to go over the 12 and starts to hit 15 and you've lowered your flame as low as you can go, you might want to move it to a smaller burner, and that helped a lot for us when we moved it over. That brought it back down into the range that we wanted it to be. Once the timer goes off, just turn off the heat and walk away. Let the gauge go all the way down. Let the steam and the pressure come out of the pot, because you do not want to open the pot when it's under pressure. When I opened it, I just opened it a crack to make sure, again, that the steam and the pressure could come out, and I let that sit there for a while, and then later came back and used that tool that I showed you that you can pick up your jars, and I set them on a counter and let them cool. Now, while they were cooling, they're going to cool. You want them to cool for a good 12 hours, just to make sure everything seals. You're going to see little bubbles in the jars, like the pressure, the water, the pressure is still coming out of the jar. It's not completely sealed yet because it wants everything to come out, all the air. So you might see it working. You're going to see it bubbling. Leave it alone, let it sit, and it will, and you'll hear it pop later, and that means all the air is out, all the bubbles are out, and it seals. That's what you want. And you can actually hear it popping. It's pretty cool. Once you're convinced that everything's done, everything's cool, then you're going to go ahead and take those bands off. I went ahead and let it sit overnight before I put them into the cabinet, wiped the jars clean, and once everything was dry, I put the date on the jar and what was in it, and then I put it in the pantry. Like I said, after about 48 hours, I put it in the pantry, and there you go. That is how you can chicken. If you have any comments, please put them below. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Give me a thumbs up if you liked what you saw, and I'll see you on the next video. You have a blessed day.